Well, I had planned on something else for today's episode, but the Dallas Stars went ahead and signed defenseman Essa Lindell to a 5-year, $5.25 million cap hit extension. We'll break it down next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Breaking news, as of about 2 hours ago, the Dallas Stars have signed 30-year-old defenseman Essa Lindell to a 5-year, $5.25 million cap hit extension. I'll share my thoughts and opinions on the matter, why the Stars may have gotten this deal done early, and some of the details on today's episode of Locked On Stars. Later on, we'll get to what I originally planned for today's episode on a Tuesday, but the Stars gave us some news to discuss, so we shall right now. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 in a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I'll say this about Essa Lindell. He's consistent. He's been reliable. He's a good penalty killer. And he's been a steady face on this blue line for the Dallas Stars over the last 6 to 7 years. He's played over 20 minutes a night over the last 7 seasons. And for the most part, he's sort of punched above his weight. I know he had a tough year a few seasons ago when he was paired with Jani Hakanpää. When Chris Tanev came over at the deadline, that pairing was the shutdown pairing for the Dallas Stars. And he could make the argument Chris Tanev had a lot to do with that, and I would. Chris Tanev was really good, and he could clean up a lot of mistakes from his partners, whether that was Lindell or Miro or really anybody else. He's a really solid defenseman. I am interested or intrigued on why general manager Jim Nill wanted to get this done, because he is entering the final season of a 6-year deal at $5.8 million per year. So yes, he got Lindell to sign at under what he previously signed at, but was that really going to be a big issue next season? I don't think so. You could possibly get him for less depending on how the year goes. And I think this year has a lot of question marks revolving around Lindell, not necessarily his play specifically, because as I mentioned, he's just been real steady. You kind of understand what you're going to get out of Lindell. But I wouldn't say he elevates his partner. I wouldn't say he necessarily makes his partner better or makes others around him better consistently like a Miro Heiskanen or Thomas Harley does. I wouldn't say Lindell necessarily always cleans up others' mistakes. He did at one point in his career. I don't know if that's really the forte of his game right now. It's all about just being a steady, stay-at-home defenseman. And he's done his job really, really well. My concerns are with the extension in years 3 through 5. What does Essa Lindell look like as a player? Because his weakest traits are his mobility and breaking out of his own zone due to his mobility. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to age well. But we'll see. And Essa Lindell is a really, really solid player. I don't blame the Stars going out and getting this extension done. I don't blame them for that. The number may be a bit high for some people, but for what he provides, I think you're going to get a nice return on what Lindell can do. And you would probably rather him play, under 20 minutes here in the next couple of years, hopefully with the rise of Liam Bichsel. Hopefully he comes up and takes a more steady role. But Lindell is going to have to play with either Dumba or Lyubushkin this season, maybe even Nils Lundqvist. Is Essa going to thrive in that environment? I mean, he's going to do what he can do, but I'm going to have some question marks around Lindell and Lundqvist, mainly because of Lundqvist rather than what Essa Lindell can do. But I think it's important to factor that in when you talk about a player and what he's able to provide for you on a night in and night basis. And I don't necessarily see Essa Lindell constantly trying to cover up for Nils Lundqvist, who they don't really trust as is. So how is that all going to work? But as I mentioned, he's consistent. He's reliable. You know what you're going to get. So I don't blame the Stars for going out and getting this done a year early. That way, you kind of know he's going to be around. You got Miro Heiskanen. Hopefully, you get Thomas Harley signed at some point. We're still waiting for that. That's the extension we were really waiting for, but we haven't gotten that yet. But now you're kind of rocking along. Like, you're going to have Lindell, Dumba, and Lyubushkin for 2 to 3 years. And then hopefully Bichsel comes up by the end of this season or the start of 2025. And you can kind of rock along with that, along with Thomas Harley once you get him done. It's intriguing because you have some big contracts like Bourque, Stankoven, and Johnston after this season. And those are the ones you have to get done. I mean, you have to keep those in the building. So are they going to have enough money in order to continue to build around this young core, especially when Jamie Benn comes off the books after this next season? He's still got to wait a couple years after that before Seguin. So there is going to be some wiggle room for the Stars. The cap continues to rise, hopefully, so that will give the Stars a bit more wiggle room. But I don't necessarily hate the extension. I feel like I'm more indifferent on it. I say, yeah, I see it. I still think that the timing's a bit interesting because, as I said, I don't think you were going to have an issue getting him to sign it under 5.8. Like, I don't think that was going to be a big problem. I just would have liked for them to let the season play out, see how Lindell thrives in this situation with Lundqvist, Dumba, and Lyubushkin, and kind of go from there, because you're already paying Lyubushkin at 3.25, and I know he'll be off the books by the time Lindell does. And Dumba's getting 3.75 over the next 2 years, and many think you kind of overspent for those. You paid the right shot tax. So how does that factor in the deals they're going to get done with Wyatt and Stankoven and Bourque? And look, I mean, Jim Nill has been able to use gymnastics in order to get deals done and to get these players signed, and I think he will. But are the decisions from this past summer going to really hinder the Stars down the line, like many like to point out Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn have over the last, decade almost? So I am curious on what this means for Thomas Harley and for Mavrik Bourque and Johnston, who you really want to get done, because, this isn't some superstar that you want to get done early because you want to get him cheaper because his price is going to rise. I don't think Essa's price was going to rise significantly even after this next season, right? I mean, ideally, you probably don't want him playing in your top 4 in the next couple seasons, like Bichsel to be in there. And then you got Miro, Harley, And I guess you got to have Dumba or Lyubushkin in that top four. And then you continue to draft and develop, and hopefully you get some guys to step up. But I mean, Lindell's a good player. He's played over 20 minutes a night, last 6 seasons. 26 points last year. You're probably going to live around, 20 points a season. But it is interesting. It is interesting. I will say that as I've said 100 times already on today's episode. I'm curious your thoughts on the extension. I think there's going to be a lot of overreactions with the price on Lindell. I feel like I see both sides. I do worry when Lindell is, 33 to 35, what he looks like as a player, because then you could possibly get into like a Ryan Suter situation where he's not as effective as you would like, and you have him playing in a pretty significant role, right? Where, Lindell at 34, I probably don't want him playing over 20 minutes a night. Ideally, you could already see what that was doing to a player like Ryan Suter until they finally moved him on that third pair. And it's like, okay, yeah, he can live there. He can be effective for you in that role. And I see that for Essa Lindell at some point. And maybe that's not right now at 30. He's a good player for you. He's a good player. I still think it's pretty team friendly at the end of the day. And it keeps the continuity in the organization, right? It keeps the continuity on the blue line, which hasn't always been the case. So you feel good about the group of Harley, Miro, and Lindell here. And then I think Bixel joins that mix, and that's 4 defensemen right there you feel pretty good about. So I certainly see, I guess, the urgency for the Stars front office to get this done. But there are some concerns, of course, and there are sort of some ways for the Stars to get out of it if it ages really poorly. I mean, he's, year 4 through 5, there's a 20-team no trade list. And I think at 34, 35, depending on where the Stars are at that point, who knows if they're going to be sellers or they're going to be buyers at that point in Essa's career. I would think they're still going to be pretty good. I think a lot of teams would like a player like Lindell. And let's face it, they need a steady guy that's, can be a solid penalty killer for you, because they don't want to give Miro a lot of those minutes. Harley started to get more of those minutes last season. Hopefully he can pick up a few more of those. And, Dumba will take a chunk out of that along with Lyubushkin. So you're able to sort of solidify your back end, and it just adds depth. I think that's what Dallas is sort of going for. If it's one thing they've kind of struggled with over the past few years now, is just some depth on the back end, like just quality players that can give you consistent minutes on a night in night basis, other than this, just kind of rotation of Lundqvist and Hanley. So now they have some bodies at least that they can trust. So you think you're going to be pretty set on the back end, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. And then I think that's where Dallas wants to reassess. So I think that's sort of where the Stars are coming from, if I had to guess. Because just kind of, I feel like this kind of dropped out of thin air. I was like, oh yeah, I guess they could have signed him to an extension. I was thinking it was going to be Harley, but Lindell, to each its own. So we'll see how it all plays out. It remains to be seen. Well, we've talked a little bit about general manager Jim Nill in this first segment, so we're going to go ahead and talk about him a bit more, because he mentioned to Mike Heika he believes the Stars are better now than they were day one of last season. Is that the case? We'll discuss next in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial, of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. $5 and a 3-week free trial. Just 5 days remaining on this. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Sundays are now for sitting on the couch enjoying football all day long. So get in on the action at FanDuel.com. $5 and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. You watch all your fantasy players on all the different teams, and you have a great time every Sunday. So go ahead, go to FanDuel.com and get in on this deal. FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Alrighty, so Mike Heika put out a article yesterday on DallasStars.com. He asked General Manager Jim Nill a few questions ahead of the Prospects tournament in Traverse City, which was not quite the success in terms of results, as the Stars went 0-2, but a success in seeing some players like Emil Hemming, Liam Bixel, and Arttu Hiru. So some of the questions that were asked to General Manager Jim Nill, and he said, we're very comfortable with what we've added in the summer. I think we have more depth on defense now. We bring up some different elements, and we have the chance to really come together and be a solid group. Matt Dumba's a good player. I think he has another level to get back to. I think last year was a transition for him, but he's 30 years old, and I think he has the opportunity to come in here and play really important minutes. He's got another level to get to, and let's hope that playing for a team like ours brings that out of him. It's a great opportunity for him, and Lyubushkin plays hard. Brendan Smith plays hard. They've got a good mix. The coaches have some options, and we will see how it fits together. He also mentions that he believes the Stars are better right now than last season. He says, I think we filled in very well with the money we had, and I think our team is now ahead of the team that started last season. And a couple of months ago, I really would have pushed back on that. But as the days have gone on and some of the stink of July 1st has worn off, I would have to agree with him. I think the Stars are better now than they were day one a season ago. But obviously, Nill even thinks Matt Dumba needs to get back to another level. Last season, he did not play at where the Stars are hoping he will play at for this next season, because he's going to have to play some big minutes. He's going to be over 20 minutes a night and playing in some important minutes. Lyubushkin may get thrown into a role where he could possibly be playing with Miro Heiskanen. He also mentioned in this interview he's not very concerned about having Miro at all on his strong side. I'm not saying I'm concerned about it, but I would like to see it. I would at least like to see it, but they don't seem to think it's as necessary as maybe you and me think, which is a little frustrating. I would like to see Miro on his strong side. But as I was saying, I think I would agree with him, and it's taken me a while to get to this point. But when you really break it down, you lose Pavelski, of course, and that's at this point mainly a locker room subtraction more than an on ice addition. Mavrik Bourque, I think, is going to be really, really good. He's going to add a different element to this lineup. Stankoven has already got some games under his belt. If Johnson is as good as I think he is, then, I mean, who cares? Like, watch out, NHL. They have really, really nice trios up front. They've had some continuity over the last few years now. I mean, this can be the third year of pretty much your top six being together, minus Pavelski. And, of course, you add Duchesne into the mix last season. So you know what you have up front. And as Jim stated, the coaching staff has some pieces to play with, but how is it going to fit together? So I would say I've come around. I think they're better than they were at day one last season. But to be fair, it doesn't make me feel any better about the Stars' chances of winning the Stanley Cup. I think that's where I stand, right? So I don't know if this group is going to get you over the hump. And that's where I'm sort of looking at this. And as we've said all summer, probably need to go out, get somebody at the deadline just to shore up the back end a bit. Because what is Lundqvist going to be? Hopefully he finds it all of a sudden. I really hope he does. And you're like, okay, yeah, he's made a significant step up. He's going to be an impactful player for you. But we haven't seen it. And the coaching staff hasn't shown the trust in him to either develop that or get enough minutes to find it, right? He just hasn't had a long enough leash. It's like, you get a couple of games here and then you're healthy scratched and it's a revolving door. But, Hanley's now gone. Suter's gone. You do add Dumba, Labushkin, and Smith to the mix, but those aren't really the spots that Lundqvist is battling for. He's basically battling to be the sixth defenseman. His real competition, I think, is going to be Smith and then Petrovic, right? Depending on if Petrovic's going to, play in the NHL or come up and down from Texas. So we'll see how it all shapes out. And that's really what I'm intrigued to see during training camp. What does Lundqvist look like? He made a nice step last season, but it's got to be probably an even bigger one this year. So yeah, I feel like I've come around to the fact that the Stars are a better team now than they were day one last year. But it doesn't make me necessarily feel great. I said necessarily 1,000 times today. I apologize. It's my crutch word. But I don't know if I feel any better about them winning the Stanley Cup, their chances, because of that. I mean, they won 52 games last year. Second best regular season in franchise history. I don't care how good you are. It's going to be hard to replicate. It'll be hard to replicate. And they had their adversity in that season. They had their adversity, and they still got it done. Can they do it? They played a lot of hockey. They played a lot of hockey over the last few years. The good thing is they got some young, fresh legs. We'll give them that. They have some young, fresh legs. They still got a nice lineup. That's really hard to replicate in the NHL. There's a lot of parity, a lot of good teams. We'll see. It remains to be seen. Okay. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want you to go to the comments right now and answer this question for me. What are you most looking forward to seeing about the Dallas Stars next season? What are you most looking forward to? I'll share mine in just a moment. Alrighty. A couple of days away from training camp. Preseason begins on Saturday against the St. Louis Blues. Hockey season is finally here, Stars fans. Thank you so much for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. By the way, go ahead and make sure you make Locked On NHL your second listen of the day. Also, check out some of the other local sports here on Locked On. Okay, we got Locked On Cowboys and Rangers. Their season's coming to an end, sadly. Got the Mavs. They'll be starting back up here shortly as well. What are you most looking forward to for the Dallas Stars next season? I want to know in the comments below. Mine is Mavrik Bourque. The Stars have hit on a lot of late first-round picks. They've hit on some second-round picks as well recently. Have they done it again with Mavrik Bourque, who was taken 30th overall? Have they done it again? It looks like it so far after winning the AHL MVP. Not a big deal. Completely torched the American Hockey League. Him and Stankoven did together for the first 3 or 4 months of the season before they shipped his buddy off. They get to reunite here in Dallas. Are these the Sedin twins? You put them together and throw whoever else on the flank and let him go? Is this the next pair? the dynamic duo in Dallas, Bourque and Stankoven. Mavrik Bourque is who I'm most looking forward to. Because of the positives and even possibly some of the negatives, maybe we're like it's going to be a lethal goal scorer. Is he going to be like the relentless sort of be like Stankoven is, just a little water bug out there going after it and mucking it up? Or is he going to sort of be that playmaker, maybe more of a Duchesne type, likes to take on defensemen one-on-one, find some space and get a shot away? I'm intrigued and so excited to watch everything that Mavrik Bourque is going to bring to the table after a full season where he just dominated the AHL. Like he's ready for this next step. Can he do it at the big boy level? Right. That's what I'm most looking forward to for the Dallas Stars next season, because Bourque could get thrusted in sort of a top 6 role. I know they have sort of a 2A, 2B situation going on. At Bourque, Stankoven, and Ben, like, seems like a really, really nice third line, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah, they'll be in good hands. So I'm curious what's the learning curve going to be like for him, or is it going to be like, okay, yeah, he gets it. You could tell with Stankoven right away. Okay, yeah, no, I know what he brings. Yeah, and if that's the case, I mean, if you get a player like Stankoven and Mavrik Bourque, like that production and just ability, then I mean, you hit. You hit on a really, really good draft pick, and it's already kind of hit when you do what you do in the AHL. But look, like, they expect him to be in a top 6 role in the next few years. That's where he needs to be, and hopefully he thrives in it. And then it's a huge success, and the Stars are off and running again. You're like, oh my God, Johnston, Stankoven, and Bourque. It's a 3-headed monster, and they're taking on the rest of the league in the next decade. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. Share yours with me. I want to know what has you intrigued, interested, maybe dreading even as well. Maybe you're most looking forward to like a collapse of some sort. Let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and notification bell. Never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you so much for all the love and support over the summer. We are back to every single day, by the way, in case you did not hear that yesterday. Every single day from here on out. Training camp is starting up. Preseason is here, and we're going to have a ball here on Locked On Stars. Thank you, as always. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.